Good morning. Sorry about not posting videos as quick as we would like to. We've had a whole bunch of sap coming in, and we have been doing a lot of boiling. But we've done previous videos on how sap gets down to our sugar house, but today we'll take you through the process of boiling. So Michaela and I are heading down to the sugar house to get going here. We first got to collect some sap. Michelle's already out along the road. We're going to pick up some buckets on our way down. So we have about 50 trees on buckets and about 184 on pipeline. We'll collect today's sap and boil all today's sap. Actually, we're collecting yesterday's sap. We'll boil yesterday's sap today, and then tomorrow we'll boil today's sap. So we kind of collect in the morning and then boil in the afternoon here. We won't have yesterday, the past couple of days we've had backed up days and tons of sap to boil, so we've been kind of inundated. We had a 12-hour boil the other day. Hopefully today is only going to be 4 or 5 hours of boiling time. So when you're boiling maple syrup, there's a couple things we can do to prevent a substance called niter. Niter is the minerals that are in the sap that when you heat it and concentrate it, precipitate out. And the first thing we do is we reverse flow. So we draw in from one side of our pans across, and then next time we boil, we draw across the other side. The other way that we keep our niter from building up on our pans is to, every once in a while, we empty all of the syrup out of our front pan and put just fresh water in there, and the fresh water reabsorbs those minerals into it, and then we can drain that off. The reason we don't want niter in our pan is that niter creates these hot spots, and because the metal in the front pan is very, very thin, any hot spots could potentially burn through. It's kind of like if you take a paper cup and hold a candle under it, the paper cup will burn. But if you fill that paper cup with water, the paper cup won't burn. It won't burn until the water all evaporates out. So the same thing happens here with our metal pans. If all of a sudden, for some reason, there was a layer of air or no liquid touching the metal, then our pan would burn through almost instantaneously. And niter creates that, doesn't let the liquid be in touch with the metal pan. So it's important that we get the niter off and prevent it from building up. Towards the end of the season, we get definitely much more niter precipitation building up. So sometimes we have to clean these pans, every 3 hours. Right now, we can get away with a 6 to 12 hour before we really clean the pans and get the niter out the pans. So we got the pans resting here. We're going to let them soak for a couple hours. Then we'll come back and start boiling. So we filter it here, saves us some filtration later on, so we'll filter it and then we'll put it back in. The other thing we have to do is pump up our sap from our lower tank, so I'm going to head down and pump that up now. Michelle and Michaela are off collecting from our buckets, so we'll get everything pumped up to our stainless steel tank up here, and then we'll be ready to boil this afternoon. Alright, so I just finished pumping up the lower tank. We'll go pump up the upper tank here. Alright, so we got both tanks pumped up here. We got some water sitting in the front pan of the evaporator. So we're going to head up and have some lunch here now. Work on finishing a chicken house, and we'll be back down after lunch after that pan sits a little while and soaks to rinse it out and start boiling for the afternoon. Alright, we're back down here ready to get boiling. We got everything put back together. We're going to light up the fire. So the fire's been going for a little bit now. I thought I'd take a minute and show you what I'm looking for down here. Basically just like what I'm keeping an eye on while I'm letting this boil. So starting over here at the back, this is where the sap comes in. It's in this float box next to me here. And what I'm doing here is keeping an eye and making sure that my level in the back pan is correct. I can do this through this glass tube here. That gives me the level of the sap in the back pan, and I need that to be about 1.5 inches deep. It's important to keep that level, that depth, because it allows me to boil efficiently with it being low, but it also allows me some room, because I don't want enough liquid to boil out that there's not liquid left on that pan. So that's like, for me, that's a good level to be at. Also in the back pan, I'm checking to see if there's any foam buildup. Depending on what foam buildup there is, I might skim it off, or I might add a little bit of organic vegetable oil to knock it down. And the reason that I'm keeping an eye on foam is because the foam, one, it can draw enough liquid out of a pan so that you could burn the bottom of the pan, but more quickly in the back pan, it would impede the ability for the steam to leave the liquid, so it's going to impede the speed of the boil. So then moving on to the front pan, a lot of it's going to be the same, so I'm also keeping an eye on my level. I can do that by looking at the little opening where the sap will flow in. That happens to be 2 inches off the bottom of the pan, and I keep about 2 inches in the front pan versus the 1.5 inches in the back, just because it can boil a little bit quicker. It can foam up a little bit quicker, so I want a little bit more room for something to go bad before I would catch it. So I can keep an eye on that there. I'm also keeping an eye on my foam. The foam in the front pan I can't usually skim up, so if there's a buildup of foam, I'll usually use a little bit of that organic vegetable oil to knock it down. Just a couple drips, usually like 3 drips does it. I have it in a little eyedropper. New to the front pan is I'm keeping an eye on my temperature reading. I have a thermometer that goes into the one side of the front pan,
and that's the side that I'm pulling the syrup off. And that temperature gauge gives me approximately when I'm going to be drawing off syrup. So that when that temperature gauge, the temperature gauge starts at 0, but 0 actually corresponds to the boiling point of water. So we calibrate that down here each time before we boil. And the boiling point of water is usually 211 degrees. And that thermometer reads 0, and then the next number it reads, it has a couple lines in between, but the next number it reads is 7. And that's an important number because that's the temperature that syrup is approximately made at. So when we reach about 7 degrees, I know that I'm at least close to syrup, and then I keep an eye on it closer with the hydrometer, which measures specific gravity of the syrup, and that's a direct correlation to the sugar content. So what I'm doing here is I'm pulling some syrup off the evaporator. This pan right here, this box, will be the most concentrated in the evaporator. And this is where my thermometer, which is right here, goes into. And that thermometer currently is reading 8.5 degrees above the boiling point of water, which is where I'm drawing syrup off for today. So I'm using the hydrometer here to double check the density of the syrup. As long as I can see this top red line here, I know that's syrup. I'm going to put it in here. If that red line goes below the liquid, then I'll dump it back in the evaporator and stop drawing for a little bit. By taking it cup by cup like this, I can really keep my density really accurate, keep the drawing nice and slow and controlled. So I know every drop of syrup that's going into those bottles at the end of the day is exactly the right density. So I'm going to pause here for a minute. It's starting to get down there a little bit. The red line, I can still see the red line, but it's getting a little closer to the liquid than I'd like it to. So I'm going to just wait here a minute or two, and then I'll pull another cup and it'll be right back where I want it.
All right, we just finished boiling. We're now letting the evaporator kind of just cool down, slow down. We got our syrup here in our canning pot right here. We're heating it back up to 185 degrees, and we'll put it in some pre-warmed bottles. Put the caps on them, that sanitizes them, and tip them on its side, which then sanitizes the cap. And that syrup will last for a year in those bottles. So we're going to get ready to bottle up some syrup here. About 2.5 gallons tonight. So not our biggest draw, but for 3 or we boil. How long we boil, Mikhail?
What time is it now?
9 o'clock.
9 o'clock. So that'd be like, I don't know, 4 hours?
4 hours of boiling,
5 hours.
5 hours of boiling for 2.5 gallons of syrup.
Alright, so we're done boiling for the night. It's about 9:15 or so. We ended up making about 2.5 gallons of syrup. We boiled about 160 gallons of sap. We got everything pretty much dry going into this little bit of warm stretch. So we won't have any saps boiling on us. So we're just shutting down. We've got it all bottled. Just started the tractor to haul everything back up to the house for the night. So thanks for watching. Please subscribe for more content on small-scale sustainable farming. We're putting out videos usually once a week, sometimes a little more often. Sometimes we don't get to it right away once a week. On what we're doing here at Firefly Farm at Burke Hollow. We're a small vegetable farm in the Northeast Kingdom of Vermont. Yeah, so please subscribe and follow along, and share with anybody who you think might be interested. We'll see you next time.
I work as a hand in San Saba, fences and windmills to mend. I've been out on a crew, eating tumbleweed stew.